I'm going to talk about the two trees, and because this lays another foundation for what we call our B schools and onwards. So we'll start in Genesis 3, or Genesis 2, I think it is. You know, you don't always need to turn to the scriptures if you don't want to, but I'll read them anyway. Actually, it's Genesis 2, and the second part of verse 9. I'll start at the beginning of verse 9. And the Lord God made all kinds of trees grow out of the ground, trees that were pleasing to the eye and good for food. In the middle of the garden were the tree of life and the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. As I was just looking at this even this morning, I just saw something else. I saw that there's the tree of life, and it's kind of like enough said. But then there's the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. So it's the tree of the knowledge. It's something that is, that it's something our mind grasps. So let's go over to verse 16. And the Lord God commanded the man, you are free to eat any of the tree in the garden, but you must not eat from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, for when you eat of it, you will surely die. I want you to remember that, because these words are absolutely loaded. The day you eat of it, you will surely die. Over in chapter 3, now the serpent was more crafty than any of the wild animals the Lord God had made. And he said to the woman, you must not eat from... Did God really say you must not eat from any tree that's in the garden? And the woman said to the serpent, we may eat from the fruit of the trees in the garden, but God did say, you must not eat the fruit from the tree that's in the middle of the garden, and you must not touch it, or you will surely die. You will not surely die, said the serpent, for the Lord God knows that when you eat of it, your eyes will be open, and you will be like God, knowing good and evil. One of the interesting things in this passage for me, I was listening to a man who many of you would have heard of, a man named Chuck Missler. Anyone heard of Chuck Missler? He's a very interesting man. He's a real, I think actually in his former life he was an astrophysicist. He has an incredible mind for searching things out and understanding. He and his wife have actually moved to New Zealand. He's an American man, probably in his mid-70s now, maybe a little more. But they've moved to New Zealand, and they actually live in Taupo, not far from us, which is quite interesting. So I've had a visit every now and then from them. So I was talking to him about this one day because it absolutely fascinated me when he brought out this whole understanding about the serpent. And he says that the word for serpent there originally is the word nahesh, and the original in the original language, and in the Chaldean language, that word actually comes out as shining like brass, or shining. It's kind of like this serpent is actually what he calls the shining one, which is really interesting. Because, we often think back to, the old Bible school stories, or the old, the old art that, they used to have in the days when not everyone could read, so they portrayed truths through art. And, you commonly see an old art picture that has, Adam and Eve standing under a tree, and we kind of got the serpent wound down the tree, speaking into the ear of the woman. Well, that was far from what it was. It was far from what it was. It was actually our daughter Amanda and you'll meet Amanda next week. She's coming over to the Okiwi School reunion, but she's going to be with us for a few days. But Amanda had a dream one night when I was staying with her, and it was long before I even began to look into this. But she said, Mum, I had an amazing dream last night. She said, I saw Satan. But she said, we always think of Satan as being someone ugly and horrible and scary. But she said, he is beautiful. And she said, when I saw him and I saw his beauty, she said, I thought Adam and Eve didn't have a chance. I mean, this being is so beautiful. But she said, but the thing was, she said, as I looked at him more, she said the thing was that beauty was deep, but it was evil. But she said, even though it was evil, it crossed your mind to think, I know that I'm going to be in hell for the rest of eternity, but maybe it's worth it just to touch that kind of thing. So this serpent was not just a snake that was wound around a tree. They really came in contact with an angelic being. And let's look over in Ezekiel 28 to where he originated. Because it says that in Genesis 3 that the serpent was more crafty or more wise than any of the other things that the Lord God had made. And here we see this prophecy, and it says it's to the king of Tyre, but there's always levels of understanding on the prophetic. And in this is obviously speaking also about the fall of Satan. It says, you were the model of perfection, full of wisdom and perfect in beauty. This being was full of wisdom and perfect in beauty. This is Ezekiel 28 and beginning in the second part of verse 12. The model of perfection. This is something God had made, had crafted to be something that was beautiful, full of wisdom and perfect in beauty. You were in Eden, the garden of God. Every precious stone adorned you. Ruby, topaz, emerald, crystallite, onyx, jasper, sapphire, turquoise, not turkeys, and beryl. In other words, it's just depicting this shining one. This one that was glimmering. I mean, I love, diamonds are a girl's best friend. Sparkly things. James often buys me Swarovski. I can never say the word. Swarovski. Those little crystal things that sparkle. He often, when he's been away and I haven't been there, he often brings me one back, and he brought me a really nice one back this time. But I love sparkly things, and in fact, little sidetrack, but when I was in Taiwan at the beginning of the year, I just, we were sitting in a meeting there, and I was sitting in the front row, of course, where I have to sit, and along the, I just don't like sitting in the front row, but along the front of the seat as I was sitting there, I did what a girl does, and I was looking at the shoes. And, these beautiful Asian women had these beautiful sparkly shoes, little sandals. So I had to go and get some. So now, when the lights are dim and there's just, a little bit of light in the air, I just see my sparkly shoes makes me happy. So anyway, here was the shining one. And he was just sparkly. And it says, your settings and mountings were made of gold on the day you were created. They were prepared. You were anointed as a guardian cherub, for so I adorned you. These are heavy words, weighty. So I adorned you. You were on the holy mount of God, and you walked among the fiery stones. Again, just speaking of the shining, glimmering. You were blameless in all your ways from the day you were created until wickedness was found in you. Through your widespread trade, you were filled with violence and you sinned. So I drove you in disgrace from the mount of God. I expelled you, O guardian cherub, from among the fiery stones. Your heart became proud on account of your beauty, and you corrupted your wisdom because of your splendor. So I threw you to the earth and made a spectacle of you before kings. So this was what the woman encountered in the garden. She encountered a being that was beautiful. You see, one of the deceptions, I think one of the enemy's greatest deceptions, is for us to think that he's this incredibly ugly, terrifying little thing that goes running around, morphs into all kinds of horrible, states. And there's a little red thing with, horns and a tail with a little arrow on the end. That is, we can easily dismiss something like that. It's like, of course there's no little red thing that runs around the earth. But this is something different. This is what he's hiding from us. He is hiding his beauty and he is hiding his wisdom. You see, now, when the woman encounters him, it is a fallen wisdom. It is no longer the wisdom that God gave him. It is something that has become corrupted. It's a corrupted wisdom. So so they had this conversation with the woman and the serpent. And, it says, when the woman saw the fruit of the tree was good for food, pleasing to the eye, because he's beautiful. He's good for food,